Welcome to our session on Single Entity Creation in Analyst Notebook version 9. This lesson will begin one of the first sections on actual chart creation. We'll look at how to add icons to the chart, how to edit icons. We'll discuss identity versus label and when to use each, how to create cards and the role that they play. We'll learn what an attribute is, how it differs from a card, and how to add attributes to the entities, and finally, how to save your chart. To begin, let's open Analyst Notebook. Once it's open, locate the Home ribbon where you'll see some of the tools we'll be using. Next, take a look at the palette on the right, which we'll be using as well. The entity or icon we add to our chart can be a person, a place, a thing, an event, or location. And there are a couple of different ways that we can add icons onto our chart. So let's start with the Home ribbon. Locate the Insert Entity section about halfway across. There you'll see options for icon, event frame, theme line, OLE object, text block, circle, box, or label. For this lesson, let's select icon. Now over on the right, you'll find the same options. Entity, theme line, event frame, and so on. Make sure icon is selected. Now take a look at the drop-down menu just above those options. These options are in alphabetical order from activities down to others. Let's select People. The palette will contain another series of options, again in alphabetical order from adult to subscriber. In order to make the proper selection, we first need information from an existing report or document. So let's minimize Analyst Notebook, and for today's lesson, open the John Abel Whale Hunter Task Force Key Suspect document, which you should have in your student folder. The document contains John Abel's name, basic biographical data, and location information. Let's go back into Analyst Notebook and resize the program's window so we can see both Analyst Notebook as well as the John Abel document. Now reading through this document, I see that John Abel is an adult male. So in the icon palette, let's scroll through the People options and find Male. Next, left-click, hold and drag the male icon onto the chart. Click it a second time to release it on the chart, or I can simply drag and drop. Let's zoom in on the male icon by scrolling in. To open the Edit Icon window, you can either select the icon and double left-click, or right-click on the icon and select Edit Item Properties. From here, we'll enter information based on the source document or source report. A word of caution: you should only enter information which comes from the report. Do not make assumptions or add information that's not actually listed on the document. For continuity, we'll start with the Data folder, work our way through the subsections, and go all the way down. The first field includes identity and label. In our current example, the person's name is John Abel. So let's type John Abel in the Identity field. As you can see, what we type in the Identity field is also automatically entered into the Label field as well. There is an important difference between these two fields. The information in the Label field will be displayed on the chart. If there are multiple entities with the same label, the unique information entered in the Identity field will keep the chart from merging those identical entities together. Now let's check Label is different from Identity. This will allow us to enter unique information from our report that separates this entity from any other John Abel which could be tied to another report or document. In this case, it's coming from a Key Suspect list. So let's add Key Suspect List to the Identity field. This feature is also helpful if you're working with common names like John Smith, for example, or other common names from various parts of the world. Next, date and time. In our report example, we are not given a date and time, but if we were, we would simply check Date and enter the date as month, day, year in the field below. We could also click Time and enter time by hours, minutes, seconds, even down to hundreds of seconds if necessary. Then you can select the appropriate time zone. If you don't have a time listed in the report, you can uncheck the time box and type No Time Given in the description field. Since we don't have either date or time in our example, we'll just leave all of it blank and unchecked. Next is description and grades. Add any additional notes or information you as the analyst feel is helpful and needs to be included in the description field. Next, let's look at the grade section. Grade 1 has options A through E, Grade 2 has 1 through 5, and Grade 3 has security classification options. The grading criteria is based on the source report. If you have an informant who gives you information, Grade 1 will refer to the quality of the source, with A being the best and E being the worst. While Grade 2 will reflect the quality of the information, 1 being best, 5 being worst. If you have a security classification for the information you're working with, you can make that selection under Grade 3. Please note, just because you select a security classification here does not necessarily mean your database is secure or cleared to accept that level of classified data. Be sure to check with your security personnel before entering any classified information. Now, let's move over to the Source section where you'll find a drop-down menu under Type. Here you'll select what type of source has reported the information you're entering, or where you got the information from. Your options range from discovery to witness. In our example, we're getting our information from a report, so let's select Record. Under Reference, we can enter more specifics about the source if applicable. In this case, let's type Key Suspect Info. You can also link to a file by clicking the ellipsis button, browsing, and selecting the file. This is certainly a helpful feature, but if the file is ever moved or deleted, that link will become broken and will no longer work. So for personal reference, I just enter the file name or number in the reference field. That way I can always search for it at a later time if needed. Next is the Style section. As I close and reopen the Style folder by clicking on it, notice the gray arrow appears to the subsection, which is loaded on the right. The first subsection we'll look at here is Type. Under Palette, the default is Standard. There are other options, but in our case, Standard works fine. Below the Standard section, you'll see Mail, and our Mail icon is selected. Under Semantic Type, we have Person selected. We can change the size of our icon under Enlargement. The default selection is normal, but we can enlarge it to double, triple, or quad, or reduce it to half size if needed. Under Shade Color, the default color is black. As you click and hover over the color options, you can see the skin tone of the icon changes. In our case, we'll leave it at default. The color options can be used to reflect nationality, roles within an organization, or whatever you want to show. Next is Display. This section shows what will be displayed on the chart. Currently, only the label is being displayed, but we can check additional boxes under the display field to add more if desired. The displayed date and time is formatted based on the system date and time, which can also be changed if needed. Next is Picture. We can browse to select a picture. We can copy and paste a photo into the system, or we can drag and drop the photo here. Once the image is inserted, we can change the enlargement here as needed. In our case, no picture is given in the document. Again, only use material you were given. Do not add a picture into the chart just because the person's name is the same or similar. Next, let's look at Frame. Here we can change the color of the frame around the entity as it will appear on the chart. The default setting is pale blue. We can also select the margin or size of the frame. The default is 2, but if we select 30, for example, you can see the frame becomes much larger around the icon. So we can shrink, enlarge, or change the color of the frame. We can also set a default style here. The frame style you choose can be used to represent different roles within an organization. nationalities, locations, or whatever your unit or organization desires. For our purposes, we will not be using a frame, so we'll uncheck the box next to Display a Frame at the top. Next is Font. This section should be relatively familiar to most users. Here we can change the font, style, size, add effects, and change the color or shading. As we make changes to the font, the sample box will show what the font looks like. For most purposes, the default settings should work fine. Next, under Cards, we have Card List. For this section, we need to go back to our source document and logically break down sections of information that go together. I could take all of the information from the report and put it in one card, but that would not be helpful, especially if you have a long document with multiple paragraphs, because you would just be recreating the report. So let's see how we can group some of the information in our example report. Here we can copy the last name, first name, all the way down to hair and eye color, and group all of that into a card for biographical information. Then we can select the Social Security number, address, down to latitude and longitude, and group it together as tracking or location information. And then add a third group that could include the phone numbers. You could make as many or as few cards as you like. It all depends on how you, the analyst or investigator, see information, what's important to you, and how you want to break it down. In our case, let's separate the information into 3 cards. First, I will highlight all of the biographical information, right-click, and copy it. Then in Analyst Notebook, make sure Card List is selected and click New. Let's call this card John Abel Bio Information. A word of caution here, be sure to give these cards specific names, not just Card 1, Card 2, or something generic. That way, when other analysts access this information, they'll be able to understand what is being listed and displayed in each card. If we were given date and time, we could include that information here. In the description field, right-click and paste the information we copied from our report. This saves a step of retyping all the information. We can fill out our source information again here. If we were given grading information, we could select all of that as well. Now we have date and time, source type, and reference here, which was the same as we had here at the top under our data information. The reason that's important is there may be multiple instances of activities or events within the same report, and we simply want to be able to capture that here and show those differences in the cards, because when we get into analytical tools later, this information is going to be very helpful in comparing different entities and the activities on our chart. So let's continue where we left off on the document and select all the tracking and location information, copy it, create a new card in Analyst Notebook, and follow the same process. And we'll do the same for the phone numbers. At this point, let's click OK. This will save our progress. You can do that at any point during the icon editing process. If we just close the dialog window without clicking OK, any of the information we've entered up to this point would be gone. Then we can double-click on the icon to return to icon editing mode. The cards we've created will not be displayed visually on the chart. They will be retained in the chart, sort of in the background, but we will not see them physically on the chart. What we can see on the chart is what's referred to here as the attributes. Attributes are facts about the entity that will not change. In our example report, John Abel's date of birth, sex, race, height, weight, and so on would be considered attributes. Now, technically, his hair or eye color could change, but only if he altered it. It's not going to change on its own unless he goes gray or bald, for example. His Social Security number will also remain the same unless you've received a false document. Things like his address, phone number, vehicle type, and clothing are all things that can change.
So those wouldn't necessarily be good attributes, but we would still include that information in the cards. Let's add some attributes. Select Add. Since our report is about a person, we'll go up to the People category. This gives us a series of options that are in mostly alphabetical order with a few exceptions. First, let's select SSN, and we'll enter John Abel's Social Security number. Next, select Add again, hover over People, and we can continue entering additional attributes. If you select a category by accident, simply click on the attribute, then click Delete. Now next on our list is Race, but when we look at the options under People, we see Ethnic Origin and Nationality. These are two very different categories. For example, your nationality could be US American, but your ethnic origin could be from somewhere else around the world. So in our case, let's select Ethnic Origin and type Caucasian. Next, let's enter height, weight, hair, and eye color. You'll notice these options are not available under People, so let's choose Build. Select and copy the height, weight, hair, and eye color in our document. And then paste that information in the Value field for Build in Analyst Notebook. A note on Build: make sure you avoid generic terms like tall, fat, short, skinny, average height. You need to be very specific here because generic terms can be subjective. Now that we're done entering the attributes, let's select OK. Now as you can see, our entity now shows his name, social, build, date of birth, not his nationality, but again his ethnicity here, and the gender. So let's review. Double-click on the entity, and you can see we've entered the data information. We've gone through this style and made changes as needed. We've entered in our cards as well as our attributes. So at this point, we have a complete entity. Let's select OK. At this point, we can also close the Word document. When prompted to save changes, select No. And now we can maximize Analyst Notebook. Now let's insert an OLE object. We can either select OLE object in the Home ribbon at the top or over on the right in our palette. In the dialog window that appears, select Create from File, then click Browse. Find the original source report or document used to create the entity. Let's navigate to the John Abel Scenario folder. Open the folder which has your single entities, then select the John Abel document by clicking on it once, and click Open. Back in the dialog window, we can link to the document or have it display as an icon. Selecting Display as Icon is recommended, otherwise the entire contents of the document you select will be displayed on your chart, which will not be helpful. I will not select a link, because if the file is ever moved or deleted, the link will be broken and useless. As you can see, the Microsoft Word document has already been created based on the file type, so we don't have to select that. As you can see, a shortcut to the document has been inserted onto the chart. Let's relabel this to Key Suspect Info. If we right-click on the document and select Document Object and Open, the document will then open and we can go back and review if needed. Now that we've created a complete entity and inserted the document, let's save our chart. Go to File, Save As, then click Save As. In the Cover Sheet window, enter a specific title. In this case, let's call it John Abel Key Suspect Info. You can then enter a different subject or keep it the same as your title. In our example, let's just copy the title and paste it into the subject field. The author will be yourself. You can use various keywords like murder, arson, robbery, and so on. You can also type in a category here. If you have additional comments that might help clarify the information for someone else, you can type that information in the comments field. In the custom field, you can add a case or classification value if needed, or you can select New and add additional fields. In the prompt section, you can select On Open. If selected, this cover sheet will appear first when you open the chart. In our case, we'll leave it unchecked. Click OK. Next, select where you would like to save the chart. You should save this to your student folder. Click Save. And you may see this alert stating that this chart uses features that are not compatible with earlier versions of Analyst Notebook. That's fine. It's just letting you know if you're using a newer version and you share it with someone who has an older version, some of the features might not be available. And click OK. Now we can see the name of the chart in the tab here. So when we close out the chart, that's the name of the chart file we'll look for on our computer. That's it for this lesson on single entity creation in Analyst Notebook. We've learned about adding icons to the chart, editing icons, identity versus label, creating cards, adding attributes, and saving your chart. Be sure to watch all of the videos in this training series to take full advantage of everything Analyst Notebook has to offer. Learn more about hands-on analytical support from Blue Light. Our expert team offers both on-site and mobile training that can be customized to meet your needs. Just go to blue-light.co for more information. Thank you for watching, and thank you for choosing Blue Light.